Today, I'm joined by Todd Evers, the Global VP of Sales at Sonrai Security, a company at the forefront of innovation where cloud security, identity, and AI intersect. In this episode, Todd shares how Sonrai pioneered the Cloud Permissions Firewall, a game-changing approach that helps organizations manage cloud access in real time without slowing down productivity. We also dive into why focusing on a single cloud provider like AWS first was a strategic move that accelerated their growth in customer satisfaction. If you're interested in how to stay ahead of cloud security risks while still moving fast, especially with AI integrations on the rise, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Let's dive in. On today's episode of Ahead, I am joined by Todd, the VP of Sonrai. Todd, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, hi, I'm Todd Evers. I'm the Global VP of Sales at Sonrai Security. I've been with Sonrai for almost 4 years now. And, just at the heart of it, I love innovation, and I get to do go-to-market, cloud security, and AI to all intersect. So I have a really great job.
Cool. I can't wait to dig in with that a little bit further. You said you'd been with Sonrai for about 4 years.
Yep.
Do you mind kind of like walking me through your background and how that led you to Sonrai?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been in sales for 30 years, 25 of them in sales management. I made the jump early because my passion is leading and managing. So I really, within the last 15 years, I've gotten into cloud and big data. So I started that journey when I joined Salesforce as a regional vice president. And when they just opened up their Chicago hub, I got my, as they say, I got my MBA in big data and cloud. And then from Salesforce, I went to large organizations like NICE Systems, that call contact software. I've been at Neustar, which did denial of service and DNS security, and then ended up at Sonrai again about 4 years ago.
So it seems like you've made the rounds of like the big tech firms when it comes to supporting cloud. You had mentioned that your passions lie in innovation, go to market, and then you are also working with cloud and at the intersection of cloud and AI. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So what really drew me to Sonrai was see how cloud security was evolving and where identity fits into that future. So just a quick journey, which probably sums it up about reason why I joined Sonrai and the way that we are looking to go to market and innovate. So back in 2016, Sonrai was formed with the intent of building what Gartner calls CNAP, which is the Cloud Native Application Protection. And it was really to provide customers a holistic view of cloud security. Then you might have heard this little company called Wiz, who took everyone by storm. And so at one point we were competing with Wiz, but as we were building our customer base, we really realized that identity was the core to all cloud security. And so we actually started to hone in on a specific subset of CNAP, which is called CIEM, CIEM, which is Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, which provides organizations deep visibility into who can access what. And so that's what we built our platform around. But that was about 3 years ago. And our customer feedback was, all these great companies that provided this solution have insights to show where there is an issue, great reporting, but they didn't tell you how to fix it. And it was such a large problem that customers were getting really frustrated with thousands of tickets being generated of, I know that's a problem, but you're not giving me an easy way to fix it. They had to operationalize the platform with lots of people and processes and groups, and there was a lot of frustration. And so our management took a step back and said, there's got to be a different way. And this is where the innovation comes in. So we actually created the first cloud permissions firewall for AWS, which easily gets organizations to how to handle this identity complex issue with a couple of single clicks to get them to least privilege.
Can you expand a little bit on the cloud permissions firewall and what that means to like a normal listener who isn't as versed in this?
Yeah, sure. So think about the cloud and the reasons why an organization goes to the cloud. Well, by putting everything into the cloud, there's been an explosion of cloud identities, and not just human identities like me or you, but machine identities. And these machine identities are getting more and more roles and functions within the cloud. So that way you can develop at, 5 times what you were able to do in an on-premise world. So this shift from perimeter security to identity-centric security really has caused a lot of issues for organizations who are trying to provide just-in-time permissions, so that way they're not over-permissing not only their human roles, but their non-human roles. And there's this struggle between trying to enable DevOps to work as fast as they can, but then for security to have some control around it and not just have to give, a star permission or the most permissions, and be able to manage those within a secure and risk-free environment.
So what you're saying is that maybe I should evaluate when I'm doing API permissions for myself into, say, LinkedIn, that I shouldn't just go, yeah, I want everything.
Yeah, no, exactly. You know what? It actually could serve a time and purpose where you need everything for an hour, for 2 hours, so you can get your work done. But then with just in time within AWS in the cloud, you can take that permission back automatically. And if you need to work on it tomorrow, the way that we set it up is that you go through chat ops. So you send a Slack, you send Microsoft Teams, you go to your manager and say, hey, I'm working back on the project. Can I have those permissions again? And literally within seconds, you're granted those permissions, and you could timestamp it, and then it goes back. We're not stopping you from doing your job, but we're making sure that we're doing it in the most secure way. That way, removing the permissions after you finish that task.
This is a really interesting idea, because historically it's like, oh, well, you need a new permission. You need to put in a ticket. This ticket's going to take you a week through whatever help desk for them to enable those permissions. You may only need it for a couple of hours, but now I have it forever, right? I have this star mark on my employee account because I have this access to something that may have much bigger implications than what I needed it for the couple of hours. And what you're saying is, because of your solution, you have the ability to do near real-time permissioning. And then once the task is complete, revert back to the original permissions without any sort of complex ticketing system.
Yes, but there is a caveat to that. It really is the speed and time to do that. Organizations are doing that today, but it's a very manual process, right? Like you said, it's submitting a ticket, it's getting escalated, it's to the right person. We had one of our customers who shared a story with us that said that they needed to elevate permissions to urgently troubleshoot a production outage. And she submitted a ticket through ServiceNow, but then waited for 24 hours and then escalated and waited for 12 hours. And by the time she got the approval, the outage was already resolved, but the delay, cost tremendous amounts in productivity and lost revenue and customer dissatisfaction. And so, with this new innovative way of doing just in time, it would have been one chat ops click away to say, outage, I need this, I have to troubleshoot. It would have been done, and it could have been remedied in a much quicker time.
I mean, just from a productivity standpoint, regardless of the outage, right? Yes. If I'm having to spend 2.5, 3 days waiting for permissions, if I'm stopped in the progress that I can make, right? It seems like from just being able for me to proceed more quickly, that organizations that you do partner with that do use Sonrai as their service provider here have a huge return on investment, because they're not having a bunch of employee time wasted waiting for permissioning.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the business use cases was, for an organization to want to get to least privilege and use just in time, they have to weigh, how is this going to impact our development, and how is this going to impact our business and the projects within our business? And that was a key requirement from our customers, is that it has to be almost instantaneous. And there has to be a log, because you can give all this access, but if we don't know who got permission to do what at what time to access what data set, come audit time, or when you have to do your SOC 2 or any type of compliance review, it's now a nightmare trying to reenact that. So, it was critical not only to give it to them in a very timely manner, but then to document it. And actually, that's where the innovation, like we use GenAI to provide a log of that session immediately after it's done to the supervisor and to either compliance or whatever audit platform you're using to keep a running tally. So when it is time to review that annually, everything's already there.
I'm having terrible flashbacks of trying to figure out who's got user permissions where from a SOC 2 compliance audit, and just
I didn't
no
mean
thank
to
you.
bring up any bad memories, but that's definitely ones that our customers have asked us to help them solve.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that in itself is a time saver, right? Because you may chase down, oh, well, I have X user in my account. I haven't seen it do anything in a month, right? It's still permissioned. It's still just sitting out there in the system. I don't know who it belongs to or what it's doing. Like, it's tied to this account, this person. I don't know if they're still there, especially if you're like, my background is software as a service. So in those sorts of situations, like, it's a nightmare, or can be.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, we're built on AWS native tools. So everything that an AWS customer has access to today, but it's a very manual process. What we've done is been able to take those native tools and put our own secret sauce around it and fully automate these tools. So now they're still having the power of AWS, but they're doing it in such a simplified and transformative manner that they're able, part of our business case is exactly what you said, savings, right? And allowing them to, work smarter, not harder. And they could take on another project because we've already taken care of this cumbersome, and often really hard thing to manage.
So you'd mentioned AWS a couple of times. Is that your primary service provider, or what was the business decision behind just partnering with AWS?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Previously when we were running our KIM solution, we were multi-cloud, and the three big clouds, obviously AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, GCP. We're natively built on AWS, so when we presented the Cloud Permissions Firewall, it just made sense for us to build off of our own architecture, and we knew that the best. And so because we just released this solution back in May of last year, we've really focused on, making sure that we can provide every feature and functionality within AWS before we go on to the next cloud. Now, a lot of our customers are multi-cloud. They have multi-cloud strategies. And so it is important to them that we are multi-cloud. And we have a 3-year roadmap. Like, we'll be releasing Google Cloud within the next quarter, and then Azure in 2026. So I mentioned AWS because that's what we could deliver today, but we're basing all of the learnings and everything from our customers to apply to both Google Cloud and to Azure down the road.
That makes sense. I just wasn't sure if you just limited the business just to solely focus on the AWS and not worry about the other two major market players. But it sounds like you started with AWS because that was what you were most familiar with, comfortable with. You're building that out, and then you're using what you've learned to build out the other two onto the other two platforms.
Yep, spot on. That's exactly the strategy.
Totally makes sense. You got to start somewhere.
Yes. And we wanted to make sure that we were 100% all in. Instead of providing 2 or 3 functionalities across 3 clouds, we wanted to provide 15 areas of functionality around AWS so they could see, how deep the product goes and then copy that over. And it's been the right call for us. So
from a sales and product delivery perspective, would you suggest a young entrepreneur, younger organizations focus on a single service line, go deep, and then expand into other areas?
Yeah. And I say this from experience because when we did our KIM solution, we did go across all 3 clouds initially and provided some services to be uniform, but we were never really able to go as deep as we wanted to. And it's actually helped from a sales leadership standpoint that, there is intricacies but between the 3 clouds, right? Like in AWS, it's called accounts, but in Google, it's called projects. In Azure, it's called subscriptions. Like, I would have to enable and teach a sales team 3 different languages almost to be able to relate and support their customers. So being able to focus on AWS, build a sales strategy around that and the partnerships. We know that the other clouds will come and there will be a time for that, but we really wanted to understand the implications of this service and just get better to help service our customers, and then the rest will grow from there.
Did you lose business because you focused on AWS first?
So I wouldn't say we lost business. We've lost opportunity because of our marketing efforts, and they see cloud permissions firewall, and it sort of evokes a visceral reaction of, I know what a firewall is, but what is a cloud firewall and what's a permissions firewall, right? So we've gotten a lot of inquiries and interest, and then a little disappointment when they're like, oh, you're not ready for Azure yet. Oh, you're not ready for Google Cloud. So again, we put them into Salesforce, and they will definitely be contacted and be part of a beta if they want when we're ready to roll out those clouds. So I wouldn't say we lost any business. It's just a future opportunity that's there, actually.
So let me ask you this. What is the biggest trend you're seeing in cloud identity, and how do you see AI and automation reshaping the landscape over the next few years?
That's a great question. It's actually one of the things that we're trying to help solve for our customers, because, every customer we talk to, their board, their CEO, their executive management, it's like, we have to be a part of this AI revolution. We have to integrate AI into our product or into our service or the way that we actually conduct business internally. And so while they all know that they need to adopt AI, there's a lot of hesitancy and there's a lot of questions about how do we do that safely and securely. Right. And so our customers are coming to us because there's actually just a learning curve from the standpoint that there is a difference between AI security and then the security that we play for AI from an identity standpoint. And for the listeners out there, the real difference is that you have a lot of AI security out there that want to make sure that you're protecting the data model. Right, that these AI models that they're generating and they're using in their solutions is releasing public information, is not providing the wrong information, that the data integrity is something that company's reputation would stand behind, right? So there's protecting the model, but then we come at from the standpoint that once you protect that model, you still have to figure out who can access that model, who can work within it, who's going to have access to the data points, what machine identities are you creating to run roles in your cloud that you're allowing it to access certain things. When are they accessing it, right? So we're looking at it from a governance standpoint, as in we had a customer just buy our solution because they wanted to start their AI journey with, okay, we're going to limit the amount of people that can actually use and touch AI in the development of our services. And Sonrai was the easiest way of doing that for them, right? So understanding what roles were created, what human permissions, what non-human permissions, what they had access to, and really starting a strategy around, let's limit it, let's understand what they can do, and then we could build it out from there.
So that leads me to my next question. You've talked a lot about different types of permissioning. Is that something that you, as part of your client onboarding, you sit down and be like, oh, here's like our standard set of permissions, or does everybody have like unique as part of their onboarding? Here's what's included as your permissioning set.
Yeah, that's a great question. So AWS alone, there's over 15,000 permissions that you can assign an identity to. We're not expecting our customers to be the experts in permissions. So what we actually did was we looked and we said, out of those 15,000, and it's growing every day, so my numbers are probably off, but there's at least 900 permissions that can cause change or effect in your cloud. Those are the ones we want to make sure that we protect. Those are the ones where you will have a definitive decision to make whether or not you want to give someone access to that, right? And so what we do is we say, out of these 900 permissions, this is what's attached to this AWS service, like Bedrock, right? Or with SageMaker AI, or with EC2. And these are the ones that you use every day. So we go in and do an inventory and a historical audit to say, these are the ones that are being used. These are the ones that aren't being used. These are the ones you should protect. And here's our recommendation based upon that history of how you can easily facilitate that now. We don't expect them to be the experts. We constantly are updating as AWS releases more services, more roles and permissions, to continually and use GenAI to update those tables for us and provide this information to our customers.
But it also, the approach in my mind makes sense, right? Start with identifying the ones that could have major implications and then build permissioning sets around those first. Be like, okay, here's the ones that you need to understand because it can impact X, Y, or Z. moving forward. How do you want to protect these? Who should have access? Who shouldn't?
Exactly. The ones that we know and have validated and say, yes, they should have access, they go on an exempt list, right? They were given that permission. They should keep that permission. We're not going to even look and evaluate that permission. But the ones that aren't being used, specifically, I didn't even get to talk about identities. You know how many unused identities an organization has at any one time? Because in the cloud world, everyone is deathly afraid of deleting something and breaking a role, which would then cause an application to fail. And so there's this graveyard of unused identities, which if an attacker gets a hold of with those permissions that are still attached to it, that's when organizations get in trouble with a possible data breach, is because they're actually using an unused identity with permissions that weren't required in the first place, and that's the vulnerability. And
let's dig into that. What if people are truly afraid of deleting them? How do you isolate those identities or depermission those identities to allow them to continue to exist without potentially breaking any of the application?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was one of the things that we made sure that we addressed in this solution. So we don't delete anything for that reason. We don't want to break the runtime cloud. So we actually quarantine them. We put them aside and we put conditions on those identities saying they are not to be used. Now, let's say you have a non-human identity that's used once a year and we quarantine it and it wakes up to perform its function. Okay, it's going to get denied, but it immediately sends a request to use that permission. And the manager or the person responsible for it say, wait a minute, let me check this. This identity just woke up. It's trying to perform this permission. Oh yeah, I forgot that does happen once a year. And now I'm going to grant that permission, but I'll also time box it to say, yes, every first of the year, this role performs this function, give them that permission, perform it, and take it away. So we've been able to look at all of those unused identities and permission, but give it away if it really needs to perform that function, to do it, and then take it back and put it back into quarantine so it can't be used against you.
I think that's it's a very eloquent solution, at least thinking about it in my head, to be able to first move the identities to quarantine so that nothing is deleted, but then time box it and say, oh, hey, once every year, I need to run my compliance once a quarter. So it's permission to be able to do so within those time constraints, I think is quite an eloquent solution.
Yeah, and again, this was to automate and not create work, right? And so when they wake up for that first time, we want to give them the ability to do exactly what you just said. Say 4 quarters, the first day of the quarter every year moving forward, they get this identity for 2 minutes and then perform that function and go back, because we want them to be able to continue to work on other projects and not have to consistently work and evaluate and comprehend the thousands of identities that some of these organizations have,
without having to go back through a directory of just identities. Oh, this is what this one does. Okay, yeah, exactly. I'll get back to it in 2 weeks when it actually is too late. Yeah, no, it's such a smart solution. So what is the biggest challenge that Sonrai faces this year, and what are the steps that you guys are taking to overcome it?
Sure. So I think every challenge for a startup is brand awareness and market awareness that we have this capability. We're sort of pioneering this identity space. So everyone wants to put you in a box of, oh, who do you compete against? Or, what solution are you replacing? And so actually, for all of the companies that have invested in that CNAP that I mentioned earlier, or in any of the other technologies, we actually enhance them. Because if you bought someone for a vulnerability for, say, CSPM, which is posture management, by looking at all the identities and taking away all the unused, all the over-permissioned, all the things that we do, it actually provides then realistic tickets on what needs to get fixed in other areas of the cloud. We actually take a lot of the noise out of someone's security posture management or vulnerability management, because anything that's identity related, we're addressing.
Going back to the initial thing, branding and market awareness is such a challenge for a lot of younger organizations, especially when you are paving your way in something new. So just trying to get the word out, and having people gain awareness of how you're doing something different within a similar space that may have people construe what it is that you do with something else.
Yeah, and so to build that brand, I mean, it does help that we're all in on AWS. So we are, co-marketing, co-selling, co-building with AWS. And, we're looking to build a partner program as well, right? So there are steps that I'm taking as sales leader to continue to build our reach, but really it's driving the message home through, local events. Like we go to the local AWS meetup and it's like one person at a time, and they tell a person and they tell a person, and next thing they're starting to talk about our approach to identity in the cloud.
Yeah, it starts with one domino.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And the great thing is that, if you were to ask me what's the difference between, the solution you provided before 3 years ago and now, it's that we're seeing our customers actually become huge advocates, and they're becoming champions, and they're wanting to tell people about how they solved this problem and what they're doing. And it's just been great to have so many customers now want to help because they see how this is completely achieved something that's been, nagging them for, a couple of years now. And so the customers have been great in the feedback and helping us develop our roadmap. Like we were supposed to release a Google Cloud last quarter, but there was so much great feedback from our AWS customers that we decided to delay that to continue to enhance this, to be able to do everything that they need from an identity standpoint within AWS.
Is that a potential risk then? Just having kind of endless user requests come in to support the AWS solution that you don't necessarily get around to the other platforms?
Yeah, so you could always fall into that trap, right? But lucky enough, our CEO, our co-founders, Brendan Hannigan and Sandy Bird, this isn't their first rodeo. They actually had a successful exit with Q1 Labs when they sold it to IBM. And so they saw that pitfall that you just described. And so, they were having a separate engineering team always work on that Google. And it was just a judgment of this last sprint, do this last iteration of AWS? And the answer was yes, we want to support our customers. Come and in good communication, come to me, Todd, what is this going to do for the business versus delaying GCP? That's one of the great things about being part of a startup is that if the communication and the collaboration is there within the executive team, you could make these decisions really quickly, which then really don't have that much of an impact on the organization.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that regardless of the size of the communication, having a leadership team who is able and willing to communicate with the rest of the organization, kind of what the plan is, what they're seeing, why they're making certain decisions, really helps spearhead them as leaders in the organization and helps the team rally around them. Yeah. Once they have that understanding. So
yeah, and to that point, this was really my first startup. As I said, I worked for Salesforce and Nice Systems, all really large organizations, and coming to Sonrai was a bit of a risk. But now that I've been here for almost 4 years and seeing that style of management and the collaboration, never say never. But I can't see myself working outside a startup because things happen so fast and you're able to facilitate change so quickly that, that's the only way that I want to lead right now, quite honestly.
It's fun, it's nerve-wracking, and it's very fast-paced.
It is. Absolutely.
Todd, you've been great. At the end of each one of my episodes, I give all of my guests 90 seconds to plug anything that they're passionate about. So in your case, this could be Sonrai, this could be anything else. So without further ado, the next 90 seconds are yours.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Brian. Look, so if you're an organization, if you're in cloud ops or DevOps or security ops, and you have this issue and you're trying to figure out, how to even approach it, and you want to protect your data, your people, your future, you can't afford static permissions and reactive security, especially within identity in the cloud. And so our mission is to provide these people who are dealing with it every day, one-click least privilege across AWS and eventually Google and Azure. But really, to sum it up, we're here to help companies innovate faster, stay safer, and build the future of identity cloud security.
Awesome. Thanks again for your time today.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.